This is Coder Radio, episode 66, for September 9th, 2013. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode's brought to you by our two fine sponsors, GoDaddy.com and Ting.com. I'll tell you more about both those sponsors as this show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our excellent host on the East Coast, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Kumbaya, my brother.
Kumbaya, Mr. Dominic. How are you doing today?
I'm feeling very chill. I fired Verizon right off the bat this morning, so that's kind of par for the course.
Yeah, so you kind of gone through the typical new office process where you hire a telco, and then that telco madly disappoints you, so then you fire said telco.
Well, it was the fact that I couldn't get a dial tone after a week that really just clinched it.
Huh? You think they get that? You think they'd have that kind of figured out by now? You know?
Yeah. So that was a simple maneuver, but I'm feeling zen today.
We have a good show too.
We have a great show. In fact, I called Mother Gaia, and she sent us two wonderful people to talk to.
Wow, yeah, that's right. We decided, we should talk about Docker. And now, do you want to talk to one person about Docker, or would you like to talk to two people about Docker? So we've got Andy and Ben from dotCloud joining us later today, and they're going to dotCloud, right? I got that right, yeah. And
we've actually met. We featured dotCloud once as the tool of the week. It's for those who don't know, it's kind of a platform as a service thing that I like to use because it supports lazy people like me who just want to git clone
and
template projects.
We have been closet Docker lovers for going on a little while now, because a while back on the Linux Action Show,
I'm sorry, you're in the cloud. I'm out and proud.
Oh, right.
I'm out and proud.
Well, here's what I did. This is just to set the stage. I proclaimed that Docker will revolutionize cloud hosting and bring Linux to a whole new level in the data center. So that was how I sold it. So we'll see how that.
Wow, so you're like at a parade. I
was pretty excited.
More out there.
So maybe those guys can calm me down later today, or maybe they'll get me more excited. I don't know. You never know. But first we got an email. Before we get to that, though, I want to thank our first sponsor, since once we jump in the interview, I don't really want to have to interrupt us too much. And that is GoDaddy.com. And GoDaddy has a great new deal now. All right. So, GoDaddy's been with the Jupiter Broadcasting Network for a while. Now it's been with Coder Radio for a while. And they have always had some great deals while on the Coder Radio. They premiered on Coder Radio with some fantastic deals. In the history of GoDaddy sponsorship of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, I have never seen a deal this good, and it goes with a brand new image they've got, and I'm really liking it. Listen, go over to GoDaddy.com or use the link in our show notes and use the code CODER199 when you check out. You're going to get .com for $1.99. You can add additional years for $9 and like 99 cents. It's a crazy great deal. Coder199, 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 people, a .com for $1.99. You know what? If you go over there right now, too, you're going to say, that's Van Damme awesome. That's what you're going to say. That's Van Damme awesome, because it's getting kicked up a notch by Mr. Jean-Claude Van Damme. You're like, oh, yeah, I thought Danica was scoring you the great deals, Chris. I'm like, yeah, she was. But you know what? She's not. An 80s action superhero who can kick data centers in the face and make .coms fall out for $1.99. Coder199 when you go over to GoDaddy.com, the world's #1 domain name registrar. And one of the reasons GoDaddy is on this program, on the Coder Radio Show, is because you guys out there often work with other people, with groups of people. Maybe you work on a project for a little while and then you move on. You have a business where you're setting something up and then you go help another business for like a contract type of thing. GoDaddy makes collaboration in the small business environment super, super easy. You can delegate administrative controls over the different buckets inside the GoDaddy administration control panel. So I can say, Alan Jude, for example, has complete control over the jupitercolony.com domain. So this Saturday, when I was crazy busy working on something and we needed to repoint the jupitercolony.com domain, I just PM'd Alan at IRC and said, hey man, I'm really busy. Would you mind logging into GoDaddy and doing this for me? Even though it's my .com, it's under my account and I could take away its access at any time. Because I have set it up, my sysadmin guy can go out there and set that for me immediately. It's awesome, it's flexible, and now you can get a .com for $1.99 when you use Coder 199. So thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. It's a great deal. Van Dam. That's what I say, Mr. Dominic. All right. Well, I thought maybe I'd read us an email before we got to our chat, because I know that we got a few emails. I put my foot in my mouth last week, and I apologize if I upset anybody. And we got a lot of emails to that effect. I know. Well, you see, I'm a bad person is what the problem is. You understand?
I agree.
Yeah.
You're like the Samsung of podcast hosts. Oh, God.
Wow. You know, there's people in here that like Samsung. Yeah, so you got to be careful about that kind of stuff.
It's not my fault. Their logo is similar to Verizon's in that they both use English letters.
Oh, I thought maybe the issue was that you just felt like you had to do it from a moral standpoint, since
it's negative in the freedom dimension.
It's negative in the freedom dimension.
Brother Richard is absolutely right.
All right, so our first email and only email this week, although we got a lot, but we got to keep it to a tighter show because Mr. Dominic has to go battle telcos. Danny wrote in.
That's a lie. It's just that they were all mean to Chris and he doesn't want to read them. But continue.
No, you know that's not true. I love reading emails. It gets me all fired up. See, I don't sleep, so what I do is I draw my energy from the hate.
From the hatred.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen Astro Boy, but I have like the red stone in my chest, and
oh my God.
Yeah, okay. So Danny writes, "Hey, don't poo-poo on Samsung." Literally, so this email starts.
It's almost as if I knew what email you were going to read before you read it.
If it had been for Samsung instead of Canonical presenting the Edge, I'd have bought 2 already. I'm just saying. I believe you stating that Samsung looking for developers was adorable. He's saying Samsung's getting legit, Mr. Dominic. So you need to check yourself before you Samsung wreck yourself. Okay. Okay. On to business. And listening to your discussion on software developers, it really reminds me as to what happened in the electronics technicians industry. From my own experience, I'm 35, as I have probably about 15 years of experience. My first jobs were closer to upstream. Back then, there was an expectation that electronics tech could perform board level and component level troubleshooting. So, you know, if you're a technician, you could do it all. We were even taught to solder and how to read the schematics and to what each component on the board did. Now, for the most part, tech level is just straight up board replacement, if not a full swap of the entire machine, and then sending that machine overseas for the board swap level component repairs. I feel that development is trending towards this in the future. I think that's particularly because the tool sets are so well made and complete. There are often not many new problems where there's not already footprints in the snow. I'm thinking soon developers will be the carpenters of the computer industry for the most part, where we won't be many pristine fields to put new footprints on. Having said all of that, a skilled carpenter is still worth his weight in gold, but it's the right type for the right job. I think it's going to be the same with devs. So, what do you think is this? Do you see an analogy between like what's happening in electronics, where they're getting kind of locked down? You know, when your iPad's battery dies, you have to just replace the whole device. You don't just swap out the battery, right? If you would have told that to 1980s Chris and Michael, we would have said that's crazy. What? You just pop in new batteries.
It's a little hard for me, right? I've never been a hardware guy, really, so I don't. I'll take, I'll have to take his word for it that they used to do that kind of stuff. In terms of, I often make the carpenter or plumber analogy for software developers in a business sense, because your business as a contractor is much closer to that than to say a lawyer or an accountant. But I mean, I guess I don't understand his point. Is he saying that there are different types of developers for different jobs?
Yeah, and maybe there's going to be different types of developer jobs in the future going forward. It's going to be more like bolt these components together instead of create these components from whole cloth.
Right. Well, I mean, that's obviously true. I think we have that now, right? We have QA engineers, maintenance developers.
Yep, I was just going to say, that's kind of what it is already.
We have kernel developers, and we have app developers. We have web. I mean, we could literally spend an hour just talking about different types of development
and
work.
those dang Docker guys are going to make it even more so. Right?
You know what? They're noobing it down.
Yeah, but in a really like consistent, good, predictable way. But we're going to get to that.
Right, we're going to get to that. I guess I'd say he's right, but I'm not sure that that's a bad thing.
It seems to be the natural progression of everything. Like, when radios were brand new, it was very common for kids to have kits, build them with their fathers, that kind of thing. When cars were new, everybody changed their own oil. No, there wasn't Jiffy Lube. That didn't exist. And now I know how to put oil in the car. I don't know how to take it out.
Yeah, I don't know how to take it out. I mean, the other side of it is, these APIs, these frameworks we're using are so large now that you really can't, at least not efficiently, do the whole stack. Right, so it would be like, I'm just thinking in my own life, trying to build a Mac app without using Cocoa.
Well, and isn't this
any other framework, right?
I honestly think this is why we've seen a resurgence in some cases in quote-unquote retro platform games and things like that, because it is almost more like I can build all of this. Like I think of Minecraft, and I think of a lot of the platformers that are getting popular on Steam, because what you're saying makes so much sense to me. Like when you build a full-fledged consumer-facing app that has to meet all the demands and expectations of the average user now, that is such a monumental process that you almost can't create the whole thing from whole cloth, because it would never make it to market. You would never finish it.
But to be fair, I mean, on my desk, I'm looking at a BeagleBone Black right now, in which I got the Objective-C runtime running on, which, by the way, I'm sure JP loves that.
I love it. You do it.
So there's definitely places, I mean, maybe a better example, even though I don't do it, is Arduino, right? I mean, how many communities are there of people just developing with Arduino, right down to the metal?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of have hope for all of those Raspberry Pi, smaller hardware pieces, because it kind of brings it all back again a little bit.
Right, and for those who don't know, BeagleBone Black it's just another board, right? I just like it because it has a beagle on it.
Oh yeah, you got one of those. I forgot about that. You haven't talked about that very much.
Yeah, I've just been skunkworks with it.
Just trying different stuff?
Trying different stuff. I had a project, but actually, after that mail service got shut down, it didn't make sense to do it.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Chilling effect is what they call that. Chilling effect. So I totally am right there with you, Mr. Dominic. And I think in a lot of ways, what that means is you open up the market, for better or for worse. You open up the market to a whole new level of skill sets, right? People who don't have to know how to create something from whole cloth. But then what I would assume you also do is you then, by its very definition, create a market for really top tier developers who really have that skill set and who can sort of then demand a premium, who have a categorical differentiator about their skill set. And I think that could actually be good for development too.
Well, I think it's more than just a linear skill progression, right? Though, because there's also, there is certainly a place for the hardcore algorithm guys.
Yeah,
there's
Google.
also a place for the
the NSA.
For the people for the people who don't do that kind of thing, but have something of an eye for UX and design, right? Apple. So I guess I'd ask the writer to write in again and kind of explain why this would ever be a bad thing. Because it's not like the low-level work is disappearing.
Right.
It's still there.
Right.
If anything, we've created all these new jobs.
But I think what his argument is what actually ends up happening at the end of the day is, at least in the case of electronics industry, which he says what he says happens is, instead of that new category of work happening here domestically, it happens overseas. So no jobs are created here from it, which is jobs lost here. In at least in the electronics industry. And you see that now. Everything is built, everything's repaired overseas. So I don't know if that's going to hold true for software, but it does kind of seem like that is potentially happening. But Danny, I'd love to, if you have any follow-up thoughts on that, email us back into coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com and share your additional thoughts on that. Now we have some hoopla. I know you wanted to cover real quick. Do you want to jump on that before we do our?
You know what? Let's go ahead and skip the hoopla.
Okay.
It was just going to be the issues at TechCrunch, but I don't even think that's worth.
I hadn't
covering.
caught what happened at all on that, so maybe we'll talk about that in the post show, because I didn't.
Yeah,
I just saw them tweet an apology, and I didn't know what it was about.
They featured some extremely sexist stuff for some weird reason.
Wow.
And there was it definitely hurt their reputation. And given Michael Arrington's, let's just say, the allegations that have frequently been made against him, it's a pattern of behavior, and a lot of particularly female journalists have drawn conclusions.
Can we all agree that we're just going to start ignoring TechCrunch? Can we just,
go to GigaOM.
Yeah. All right, well then, before we get to our guest this week, I want to thank our second and final sponsor for this week's broadcast, and that is Ting.com. Ting is mobile that makes sense, my mobile service provider, and I have been thrilled because LTE has been lighting up all over the place recently. Now, if you grab a Ting account, you're going to probably see an average monthly bill of around $21. Mine right now is about $12. $12. It's fantastic. I've got the HTC One. I absolutely love it. I'm not locked into any contract. There's no early termination fee. There's no bundling, no ride along. It's just what you use and any taxes they legally have to charge. And they have a really interesting way of going about their billing process. You only pay for what you use. So instead of paying into like a $60, $70, $120 a month plan and maybe only using half the minutes that month, Ting will just bill you by they take the minutes, the text message, and the megabytes, see where you end up at the end of the month, what bucket you fall into, and they'll bill you for that. And in that, they'll include hotspot and tethering, voicemail, picture messaging, three-way calling, caller ID, all of that stuff. It's fantastic to be able to just flip on the tethering and not have to worry about, do I have the right to do this? Are they going to catch me? Is there an extra fee associated with it? Do I have to have a special family share plan to do this? None of that. Plus, since my wife handles all the actual bill paying, it's really nice that the Ting website is very easy to navigate. She didn't have to learn a whole new system. It was very straightforward. She jumped right in. It was clear, concise, super easy. Same with my mom. I put my mom on Ting, and she's found it completely easy to manage on her own. And if she ever gets stuck, she can call Ting at 1-855-846-4389. That's 1-855-846-4389. And if you call between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern, that's where Mr. Dominic lives, an actual person answers the phone, like a real person. Listen, people love Ting, and you're people, so you'll love Ting. I have found it to be exceptionally great service. I love that the LTE is coming online, and in my area, I've got WiMAX 2, which is fantastic. They sell one of the little overdrive devices. If you go onto the Ting website and go to the used category, you can get a Sierra Overdrive Pro for $28. Now, if you go to coderradio.ting.com, they're going to take $25 off your first month of service or a device, whichever. And if you get that discount and you grab the Sierra Overdrive Pro, well, the device itself is only $28. If you've got WiMAX in your area, you have got to get this because then you only pay for what you use. There's a flat $6 a month fee for the line, and then only what you use after that. If it sits in your drawer for a month because you didn't go anywhere, you don't have device guilt. It's great. So go to coderradio.ting.com to take $25 off of your service or your device, whichever you prefer. And I would like to put in a personal recommendation for the HTC One if you're looking for a new Android device. I think you'll be quite pleased. And if you're looking for a portable Wi-Fi hotspot, go check out the Sierra Overdrive Pro at $28. Man, when you take that discount, man, that's a great deal. That is a great deal. So thanks to Ting for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. And you guys can find links to the Ting page in our show notes. All right, Mr. Dominic, well, joining us on the Skype line, we have two fine individuals from dotCloud. We have Andy and Ben, and we have to be nice to Ben because Ben is the CEO of dotCloud. Welcome, guys, to the Coder Radio program.
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
Oh, absolutely. But I think maybe you might have picked up that both Michael and I are big fans of Docker. Could we start just to sort of introduce people who maybe are not current on all of this? Why don't we start with Ben, maybe introduce yourself, and then Andy, introduce yourself and what you guys do. And then if, Ben, maybe you wouldn't give us just a real quick summary of what dotCloud is, what you guys do, and what Docker is.
Yeah, well, I'm Ben Golub. I'm CEO of dotCloud, which is the company behind Docker.
And I'm Andy Rothfuss. I'm the developer support manager for the dotCloud platform as a service. And I'm also the chief maintainer of the Docker documentation. So I've got a foot in both camps.
Well, guys, it's great to have you both. Okay, so who wants to take the what is Docker and how does it relate? How does Docker and dotCloud sort of exist together? I know Docker is an open source project, right? But you guys sort of are the shepherds of it, correct?
Right. Yeah. So we were running a platform as a service company, and platform as a service basically makes it easier for developers to get their ideas up and running in production. And the thing that we noticed as we were running this platform as a service company is that developers were, even with a great service like ours, were still spending far too much time worrying about whether their code would run in-house, whether it would run on different clouds. And so they're worried about how the code is going to run rather than worrying about creating awesome code. And so we took a lot of the core technology that we had in running our platform as a service and released it as open source, and that's the Docker project. And Docker really basically lets you, as a developer, take any application and its dependencies and package it up in a lightweight virtual container that will run almost anywhere. It will run on any Linux server, so it can be in-house, it can be at Amazon, it can be at Rackspace, it can be at any other of the sort of cloud providers. and you know that what works on your laptop as a developer will work in test and production, etc.
Very good. And Docker is it's sort of like is it insulting to call it containers meet Git, or what would be like a quick way if somebody's familiar with like jails and that concept? How would you equate Docker in that?
I like to think of it as a tool that runs three different ways. It's containers meet Git is nice. I like to think of it as a tarball that's smart enough to run your processes and set up networking to talk to those processes for you.
Right. Very good.
So we're tying into containers in the operating system, and once you've created that image, that's where that Git-like part comes in, where you can share what you've created, you can share how it's created, or you can share the image itself. All of those are part of the Docker ecosystem.
And that gives you a true power where you can, like Mr. Dominic could be writing something and he can have a pristine environment that he can publish up to that Docker Git-like service, and then he can deploy it on a new machine and have that exact same environment within that Docker container, right?
Correct.
That's right.
It's called the Docker index, and there's a Docker registry where you upload your images to. And it's different than some other ways of doing configuration management because you're not recreating the packages by re-downloading them to each machine you're installing on. You're just installing one thing that includes all of the packages. They're exactly the same files. It's not a reinstallation. It's an image.
Very good. Now, Mr. Dominic, I wanted to get those basics out of the way. I didn't want to, take away from any questions you had, though.
Right. Well, I would just, so I've been evaluating Docker for a while now, and it's pretty exciting. One issue that I know we've talked about on Code Radio before is that I have a lot of Linux servers in the cloud, so to speak, particularly Ubuntu servers that are kind of, maybe they're on slightly different LTS versions, right? Maybe deployment's a pain, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. And Docker, for instance, I could have one Docker index, as you guys call it, for Java Play and just deploy that, which is great. I mean, it sounds silly, but really, when things work on localhost and they don't work on the live server, I'm sure every web developer knows that's a huge problem.
Right. So what Docker lets you do is it lets you start off with the same root file system. And once you've got that image on each one of your machines, then any other changes you make to it, like adding the Java Play stuff, would just be the diff compared to that base image. It'd be pretty small.
So I'm wondering, because I know Docker has, a 0.61 or just a 0.6 right now.
Mm-hmm.
What is the roadmap to 1.0? Because, a lot of people, I think myself included, are really reluctant about deploying non-1.0 projects into production.
Yeah, no, it's we have a path to 1.0 that we've laid out on the website. It's actually kind of scary for us too. We say right now Docker is not for production use, but we're hearing from some of the largest web companies that they're already using us in production. So we need to get there really quickly. But in essence, we have a plan between now and the end of October to get to something that we feel is production ready, and that's really about two things. First of all, it's shrinking the core of the product down so that a lot of the things that people might want to do with Docker can be done as pluggable modules. And the second thing is making sure that Docker really does truly run everywhere, which means that we can make it work on lots of different flavors of Linux, lots of different kernel versions, etc. We sort of have this challenge in that we have a really active developer community, so we can't just freeze the code and say, hey, okay, go away for 2 months while we harden it. So we're sort of changing the engines while the plane's in mid-flight.
And doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. So how long have you guys been around now? Because I thought it was a little over a year. Am I wrong?
Well, dotCloud's been around for a couple of years, but Docker just launched at the end of March.
Wow.
So we've been just amazed by the growth. I mean, at this point, we've got 60,000 downloads. We've got, I think our last release we had
over 100 big contributors.
100 big contributors. And there are only 18 people at the company, so you can figure that most of those people are in the community. And sort of all of the big projects around us, Chef, Puppet, OpenStack, have integrated Docker.
Have you guys had any conversations with commercial software vendors who are looking at Docker as a strategy for deploying commercial software on Linux and sort of normalizing all the differences between the different Linuxes?
Absolutely. So we see a lot of big ones. Some that have spoken publicly. MemSQL, which is one of these NoSQL database companies, has used us and is talking about it for precisely that reason. They want to write great code and then let it be deployed at their customers' sites. And you said you of course talked about the problem of having something work on your laptop and then not knowing if it'll work on the web server. Well, you sort of multiply that by every customer's environment, and you have a huge challenge unless you can really make sure that things work consistently.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the demand for something like that.
Right, and I could say I've done a few. They have a very nice getting started page up on their site, and I've done a few of the walkthroughs. It's a very nice process.
Yeah, we have a new interactive tutorial too, so you can get started without downloading.
Oh, look at that! That's awesome.
Look at that. Yeah, it's a live.
Oh, that is so. Oh, wow. Oh, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. This is the coolest tutorial I have ever seen.
Cool.
That is. I'm going to put a link to that in the chat room right now.
Nice.
Wow. Look at that.
So, just kind of digging into it, though, what is the kind of relationship with Docker and dotCloud? Is it a straight sponsorship?
dotCloud developed the core technology. So right now we're the core maintainers of the project and work on a lot of the core modules. But we're really trying to make this a true open project. So we've got open design philosophy where we involve the entire community in our roadmap. And anybody within dotCloud who works on Docker has to follow the exact same procedures as any member of the community. So we put about 3/4 of our resources towards it, though. It's really the most exciting thing we've got going on right now.
And this is a Linux-specific technology, correct? You're using components within the Linux kernel, so this is not like something that could be ported to Windows or Mac OS X or BSD?
Right now, that's correct. A lot of the stuff that we're using is a small jump away from things that you might find in Solaris or a few other Unix variations.
Right.
It's a bigger jump to things like Windows. But I started doing some light research onto that, and they have some hooks that someday I could imagine becoming Docker-like. You need the ability to do copy on write file systems, you need process isolation, you need network configuration, and I think pretty much any modern operating system has all of those things. So someday a Docker file might need the intelligence in it to figure out not only what networking it needs, but what operating system it's actually running on and what CPU it's running on. But right now, it's all Linux x86, and it will be for quite a while. The rest of that stuff's pipe dreams, but not impossible.
Now, one thing that I think was pretty interesting when I started digging into Docker, and our chat room just caught it too, is...
With the release of Docker 1.0, we'll be able to go pretty quickly to support things like Solaris zones or BSD jails for those of your users who are familiar with that. But even today, you can run Docker as a virtual machine on top of a Windows box or on top of a Mac laptop.
Yeah.
And a lot of those virtual machines, especially with VirtualBox, are practically invisible. You can start them up from a command line. There's no GUI going there, so you're just talking to it like...
Oh, I think they got a little... do we get a little Skype drop? Well, that sounds interesting because... I think the BSD jails thing would probably be a pretty quick...
Yeah, and that's a pretty common thing, actually, in the community. People seem to be comparing Docker to jails and BSD.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a good comparison. The idea is similar on the file system side. The next thing is to get the process isolation.
So let me ask you this. I tend to work on a lot of different stacks, right? So I do a bit of Java play, a bit of Rails, a bit of basically whatever. Would I need to have a different Docker index for each of those platforms?
No, there's actually two ways to use a Docker index. We have a public index, which of course we encourage everybody to use, where everybody's containerized things can go. So you don't even have to start from scratch. You can, if you need to pull down a great, Django in a container or Ubuntu in a container, you can do that. We also have the ability for you to set up your own private index, but the index basically just cares about containers. And so no matter what's on the inside of the container, every container sort of looks the same to the index and looks the same to the server.
When you're running in multiple languages like you were talking about, you might create a different image and upload that to a different repository in the index. So it depends on how you're planning on using them. Will they be all one monolithic stack talking to each other on the same machine, or do you want to run them across a bunch of different machines, Ruby over here and Java over there? depending on how you do it is how you'd set up your images and your repositories.
So now this may be way off base, but I've been using dotCloud for a while, and on your GitHub you have, for instance, you have a Rails quick start that you can clone from Git, right? I think it has some settings done and is a Rails project configured with, I think, MySQL.
Okay, so those are running in two different services.
Okay.
The Docker equivalent would be to make a MySQL repository with an image for running MySQL and a Rails repository for running Rails. And then you'd set environment variables in each one of those so that they know where the other one is. I guess it's more important that the Rails one knows where the MySQL one is.
MySQL one would be,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So are there any plans for, dotCloud has a very nice GUI. You kind of go through it. For most of the common stacks, you guys do have those quick start repos you can use. Are there any plans to just be able to fire off a Docker, however you want to say it, just like a Docker instance up to dotCloud as part
up
of
to
that quick start flow?
I don't think anything like that's going to happen before 1.0. After 1.0, we get to see how the community wants to use containers and what the platform as a service works best as.
Right. I mean, what I would say is that with dotCloud and most paths is you've got a set of languages that you can choose from, and you have a infrastructure that you can deploy on. With Docker, you can package anything in it and you can deploy it anywhere. So we already have some really nice ways for you to, with very little effort, deploy Docker, on our infrastructure, on DigitalOcean, Rackspace, AWS, you name it, or your own servers.
Yeah, DigitalOcean's got it down to a one-click install. It's kind of awesome.
Nice. Okay, can I shift gears? Is that okay? I had a question that came up in the chat room, and it was one of the things that I noticed when I was digging into Docker too. You guys are using Go. You guys are writing this in Go, correct?
Correct. If you look at GitHub, it's regularly one of the topmost active Go.
Well, that was that was my next question. Is I now this is my own ignorance here, but I'm not familiar with a lot of big Go projects like this, and I'm wondering, A, are you guys kind of the lone ranger out there with this, and B, how has that been, and why Go?
Yeah, so I'll answer the the why Go. So dotCloud, our sort of original paths, was written in Python, and when we did Docker, we wanted to force ourselves to really write it from the ground up and make sure that we wrote it for an environment where there's a lot more going on that isn't under our control. So that was part of the reason to go to Go. Part of it was we loved Go, and we knew that there were a lot of developers out there who were excited about Go. So we wanted a vibrant community, and we wanted to do it in a language that would really excite the community. And so far, that's worked really well for us. And we're not alone. There are lots of other great projects out there using Go, but as Andy said, we're one of the largest.
Well, it was a point of interest, and I don't really know of many others, but I hear so many good things about it from our community specifically. It seems to be a popular topic, so I grabbed onto that and I thought, that's kind of interesting. I wanted to ask you guys. Now, I wondered. I want to switch back to deploying, because my background is in system administration, and I'm just recently thinking about setting up an email server. Is services like, do you see a future in Docker where people run things like maybe an IMAP server in there, or they run their Apache instance inside a Docker container? And maybe this is how...
I would be surprised if there weren't images for that already.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mailgun. This was a mail service that was purchased by Rackspace, but they talk pretty openly about how they're using Docker in their environment.
Very interesting. So they run the mail server instances inside a Docker container.
I haven't seen what they said publicly.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Leaks are great.
I was just thinking, like, from a change management standpoint, from an enterprise standpoint, there is huge potential here for, change management, rollback if something goes wrong, and there's verification. Okay, IT certifies that this configuration is secure and ready to deploy. Now let's push this out to all of the systems. And I think for me, I look at the potential for people taking Docker and not necessarily using it just for development, but for using it to resell cloud services and using it to resell infrastructure. I don't know, maybe I'm going way off base here, but it seems like for a certain type of work case, it could eliminate a lot of the people out there that are using virtualization on Linux right now. And if you eliminate virtualization, you remove a huge amount of overhead. You get a lot more performance out of the iron, and you could, like as Rackspace's case, you could have potentially hundreds of more customers on a rig. So when you guys are writing Docker and you guys are working on Docker, what is pulling you? What is it? Is it the server-side hosting thing? Is that really what's driving this? Is that aspect of it?
Yeah, well, we sort of like we're interested in the entire chain from the developer all the way through test, QA, and to production. And we share your view that virtualization is really overkill, or traditional sort of VMs are really overkill. I mean, there's no reason to take a application written that measured in megabytes and package it up with an operating system that's measured in gigabytes, and that has to run only in certain environments. Mm-hmm. So we try and isolate things in the smallest possible or the lightest weight possible container, and that's great for developers. But it's also great for things that need to scale to massive levels in production.
I understand that absolutely. I look at this as I kind of want to throw it up on my home server here and just start playing with it for little things, because like Michael was saying, I have a mix of different Ubuntu servers that are not even long-term support, and it seems like I could completely normalize those problems by throwing something in a Docker container. And I'd love to have this even with like desktop applications. I would love to have Chrome in a Docker container.
So let me ask you the $40 million question here. How dangerous do you feel it would be to start using this today in production? I mean, I know you said a lot of companies already are.
Danger-wise, the danger is keeping up with the changing APIs and the interfaces.
Right.
It's not that things are broken or unstable they break on you as they're running. What they break on is dotCloud and the community just pushed a brand new version of Docker, and this API changed radically, and this cool tool that you made to make your deployments better suddenly doesn't work anymore.
So Docker is sitting on top of the Linux kernel technologies, right? And those are pretty sound. So that the kernel level stuff is solid, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. The kernel level is solid, and the way we send the image around is very solid. It's based on tar. So when I was saying it was a tarball that knows how to run your processes, I wasn't metaphorically speaking. That's what it is.
Wait, literally, there's like a description file in the tar that says do these things, or
that's you could think of it that way. There's metadata in there. You can see it when you're working with Docker containers up in var-lib Docker. You'll start seeing subdirectories where the containers are, and inside of those, there's a config file, and it shows what the networking interfaces should be, and how much memory it should get, and how much CPU weight it should get, and all those things that you configure via Docker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is really exciting. This will solve a lot of problems for me, particularly.
So if I had to give actual advice on somebody to whether they should use it in production right now, I would say no, because I come from a support background.
Right.
But the bridge to going to production is available right now, which is you can do a Docker export. So you could use Docker containers all the way from development through testing, and then when you finally take it to your production server, do a Docker export and take that tarball and put it on the server, and it acts like a whole file system. And that way, you're not using any of the Docker APIs in production. Then when Docker goes to 1.0, you take the chain all the way through to your production system, and you can build solid tools around it and know that the interfaces aren't going to be changing.
Yeah, in my experiment with it, I had a use case where I had a quote-unquote Arch Linux server, and then I needed to deploy an Ubuntu-compatible application. So I used Docker to create an Ubuntu environment on the Arch Linux machine, and it really was pretty incredible, because within just a few keystrokes, I had an entire Ubuntu environment living inside my file system, and I installed applications, and it was really great. And I love the integration you guys have with the index. How does that work? Can I have my own Docker index for my company? Could my enterprise have a Docker index server?
Yes. Yeah. So we have open source the index as well. So if you want to run an index, you can. And within the next few months here, we'll also offer a private hosted index as well.
There you go, Mr. Dominic. You could just throw all your stuff up on your own private index.
Yes, private. Good, yes. So I would just to kind of wrap up, what would you say is and could either be two different things from each of you or just one unified thing, is the most important message you would like to get across to developers who are either unsure of what Docker is? Because to be honest, we've been getting emails about Docker for a while now, but there's a lot of confusion. In fact, it seems like I was a little confused myself.
Yeah, I mean, maybe two things. First of all, you want to learn about Docker? We've got a great interactive tutorial. Go do it, and you'll get it in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
But I think the thing to keep in mind with Docker is it's really trying to free up developers to do what they want to do, which is write their application and then build it once and run it anywhere. And then for the sysadmins, sort of the opposite. They get to configure once and then run anything.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Okay, that's great.
And that, literally means like I could sit here and I could build something on, Michael's talking about development, but I could build up a server environment on my Arch laptop and then I could upload it to an Amazon EC2 instance and I would get the same exact results.
Yes.
That is so incredibly powerful. You've almost, in a way, made Linux like this portable, it's like a portable application almost, the entire environment. It's part of just the application's dependencies and it just goes with it.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, guys, pretty impressive stuff. So what are the main websites you want to hand out? I know you've got docker.io. That's probably a good one, right?
That's the primary starting place. From there, you can find the docs. You can find the community hooks. We've got very active IRC channels for development. And we do pay a lot of attention to the GitHub repo issues that are filed. So pull it down, try it out, let us know what you want fixed, talk to us on IRC, file any issues, and grab issues to work on yourself. It's a great way to start working on practical things and go.
Right on, guys. Well, keep up the great work, and maybe we'll talk again in the future. I'm going to be, I know both of us will be watching where it goes because it's really awesome. It's really exciting. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you very much.
You bet. There goes Andy and Ben from dotCloud working on the Docker project. Couple of great guys. And I'm, as an old sysadmin guy, I'm pretty excited to see this. Virtualization was great, but this is going to take it to a whole new level. What do you think, Mr. Dominic?
I'm really excited. I did the tutorial earlier this week and kind of was running through it. It is probably going to become a normal tool for my tool chain.
Yeah. I'm quite serious. I might deploy an email server here at my house inside a Docker container.
Well, I've been moving, and we didn't cover it, but Rackspace is doing the free hosting for developers. But traditionally, I just have a Dell server in my office or house, depending on what month it is, where I'm just deploying, I'm trying something crazy, right? Like when I was first trying Java Play, I was deploying it right to my local server.
Right. Now you don't have to worry about messing up your system.
Yeah, and that's you don't really need a skunkworks system laying around.
Right. I have trashed many systems trying out things for the Linux Action Show. And now I sometimes I do it in virtualization, but a lot of times I don't. And Docker kind of solves that because I don't have to worry about the penalty of virtualization overhead and all of that. Before we run today, I just wanted to give a quick plug while we're talking about code and update and stuff. And hardy. We pushed out updates to the Jupyter Broadcasting affiliate extensions. So at the bottom of our website, we have links to click on before you shop over at Amazon and Newegg and Netflix and ThinkGeek and Best Buy. We also have, and Code School. We also have Chrome and Firefox extensions. If you install those in your browser, it'll automatically tag your shopping session so you don't have to pre-click those links. It also has more sites. We just added woot.com, which is a popular request, and Monoprice is in there. We've added memory optimizations on Firefox and improved integration on the newer versions of Firefox. But the big thing we did, and it's sort of a double-edged sword, we needed to kind of change the extension to be a little more polite. So that way, if you clicked an affiliate link on a site manually, ours would not override it. It would say, oh, they're intentionally tagging this. I'm going to let that happen. That changes the way it looks at URLs, so that means it has to reprompt you to authorize to use it. At least on Chrome. I haven't tried Firefox yet, but in Chrome, the plugin is disabled as of right now.
Nice.
Until you re-enable it. Yeah, which for us sort of comes at a bad time because while Scale Engine is awesome and gives us an amazing deal, we had a record-breaking month last night, bandwidth-wise. Last month, we smashed all records, and so it really kind of sucks that this affiliate extension is being disabled right at that time. Because while that's really good news, it also means our costs have gone It was an unbelievable jump. But I'm very excited about it, but at the same time, it's anyways. So if you would make sure, go into Chrome and make sure that the affiliate extension is turned on, I would appreciate that. And if you don't have it yet, you can find it at the bottom of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. And the Firefox and Chrome ones, both were just resubmitted with some nice updates. And those also are available on GitHub if you want to take a look at the code. All right, Mr. Dominic, anything else we want to cover before we get out of here?
No, that's it. I have the Comcast man waiting at my office for some reason an hour early. So.
Well, isn't that great? I know. Well, at least you're going to have internet. Okay, well, then we'll just leave it at this. If you'd like to get a hold of us, there's a few ways you can do it. You can start a thread in our subreddit over at coderradio.reddit.com, or you can send us an email, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or probably even easier, just pop that contact link at the top of our website, and then choose Coder Radio from the drop-down. Mr. Dominic, where can people follow you throughout the week?
They can find me at dominicm.com.
Nice. We'll have links to that, our social profiles, as well as some of the things we covered in today's episode in the show notes. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, look for Coder Radio 66, click that, and you'll see the notes as well as RSS feeds, where you can subscribe and get the show weekly. And don't forget to join us live Mondays, 9 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, over at jblive.tv and jblive.info. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of Coder Radio. See you right back here next week.